At my company's anniversary party, I unexpectedly ran into my classmate Sarah. But Sarah just mocked me for being a factory worker. "Don't come near us if you see us, okay? My husband is a Harvard-educated director, way above someone lowly and incompetent like you." Her words, seemingly enjoying the harassment, brought back painful memories of middle school. Back then, Sarah used to bully me for being poor. Finally, I felt as if the last straw of my patience had snapped inside me. "Well, your husband will be unemployed from tomorrow." Sarah was shocked by my unexpected words, but soon laughed it off as a joke. However, she and her husband would soon understand the true meaning of my words. My name is David Young. I'm turning 42 this year. I met my wife Annie at work and we got married. It's our 15th wedding anniversary this year, and I've never really had a serious argument with the kind and family-oriented Annie. I'm always grateful to Annie, who always supports me, and we live a peaceful life together. One day, my company decided to hold an anniversary party. It's the 50th anniversary this year, so it was going to be a big event, and I was looking forward to it. On the day of the anniversary, I wore a suit and tie picked out by Annie and got ready to leave. Annie had her hair done beautifully in the morning and was wearing a light-colored dress. "How do I look, David? You look incredibly beautiful." Her elegant beauty was mesmerizing, perhaps partly due to my bias. With Annie by my side, I headed to the venue. The venue we rented was quite large, and as we got closer, we saw more people heading to the same place. It's typical for a big corporation's anniversary party to have so many invitees. Yeah, there must be hundreds of people invited. While exchanging words with Annie, we entered the venue and waited for the event to start. Inside, many people had already gathered, exchanging greetings and introducing themselves. Company events are, in a way, a chance for self-promotion, so the more capable employees are eager to network. While I was greeting attendees, I was suddenly approached. "Is that you, David?" "Nur, Sarah, right." There in front of me was Sarah, my classmate from middle school. She was eyeing me with a look that seemed to mock me. Sarah, the beauty and center of attention in our class since childhood, still maintained her beauty even after about 30 years since middle school. But now, her beauty faded as she glared at me with her eyes narrowed. "It's been a while, hasn't it, David? What are you doing now? Everyone's worried about you since you never show up to reunions." Sarah spoke to me with a mocking tone. To be frank, back in middle school, I wasn't exactly a standout in my class. Sarah, seemingly oblivious to this, kept talking with a high-pitched, cheerful laugh, even though I hadn't asked. "I got married 5 years ago. My husband is an elite employee who was in charge of an overseas branch until recently, and today, he's even getting recognized as an outstanding employee." "That's great, congratulations." Surprised that Sarah's husband worked at this company, I still offered my congratulations. Then Sarah, for some reason displeased, frowned. "There's no need for you to congratulate me. What kind of job do you have? Being here, are you associated with the company?" "I am." Before I could explain, Sarah waved her hand dismissively, as if bored with the conversation. "Never mind, it's not important. You probably work in some subcontractor's factory, being a middle school graduate and all." "I do go to the factory, indeed." I started to speak again, but by that time, Sarah had already turned her back on me. She had lost interest in me. "A factory worker like you shouldn't even be here. Just stay quiet in the corner and don't embarrass yourself." With that, Sarah walked away towards a man. That must be her husband, Brandon. While I thought it was petty, I made sure to remember his name. Sarah mocked me for being a middle school graduate, but to be precise, that's not entirely true. When I was in middle school, my mom got seriously ill, and my dad lost his job due to the recession. From that day, my life changed completely. My dad, once a diligent employee, started drinking and gambling to escape from the harsh reality. Soon we ran out of money and had to sell our house, moving into a small, old one-bedroom apartment. As a middle schooler, I grew taller but couldn't afford new uniforms or sportswear, so I had to make do with hand-me-downs from relatives. This made me a target for ridicule among my classmates. I was called poor and uncool. Sarah, beautiful and bossy, was the ringleader, even instructing the entire class not to talk to me. She was the popular girl in class, and no one dared to go against her, so her bullying continued until we graduated. On graduation day, Sarah called me over and asked with a sneer, "Which high school are you going to? It'd be good if you could get a hand-me-down uniform." I was so annoyed by her persistent teasing that I retorted, "I won't need a uniform for the high school I'm going to." Not going to high school, just working after middle school. Yay, that's right, I'm going to work after graduating middle school. Hearing my response, Sarah burst into laughter. "Can't believe you don't even have the money to go to high school. Well, do your best to earn, you poor middle school graduate." I left without replying to her. What I told Sarah wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't completely false either. I attended a night high school while working during the day. My dad was still drowning in alcohol, and my mom, who was doing piecework, kept going in and out of the hospital, so I had no one to rely on. After graduating middle school, I desperately looked for a job, but there were hardly any companies willing to hire a middle school grad. The only place that hired me was the machine manufacturing factory where I work now. I've always loved tinkering with machines, so I threw myself into this job. I worked during the day and attended high school at night. Balancing work and study was tough, but I managed, thanks to the encouragement from my older colleagues. They taught me the ropes at work and even treated me to lunch sometimes, treating me like their own son. Years went by as I worked, supported by everyone. After finally graduating high school, I planned to continue working at the factory as an employee, but my senior colleagues advised me otherwise. "Now that you've graduated high school, try to study as much as you can." They suggested I go to a technical college, telling me about scholarship programs and direct company support for employees. I was surprised and grateful for their concern. So, I went to college. I chose a university department related to my company's business and gained strength by acquiring various certifications and researching specialized fields. After graduating from college, I returned to the company, and a few years later, at 25, I encountered a turning point. At work, I met Annie, who would become my wife. Annie was kind to everyone and had a lovely smile, and I gradually developed a fondness for her, but it turned out that she was also interested in me. She asked me out on a date, and that's how our relationship began. A few years later, we happily got married and built a warm family together. Throughout such a life full of ups and downs, I had completely forgotten about being harassed in middle school. So, when Sarah approached me at the venue today, I was genuinely surprised. Seeing my distressed look, Annie looked at me worriedly. After I briefly explained the situation, Annie tightly grasped my hand. "No matter what anyone says, I know you're a wonderful person, David. Let's stay confident and enjoy the company's anniversary party." "Yeah, you're right." Encouraged by her supportive words, I squeezed her hand back. Thus, we decided to wait for the party to start. After exchanging greetings with everyone, the hustle and bustle finally settled down. Thinking of resting until the start time, I moved towards the wall with Annie. "Oh, you're still here." There were Sarah and her husband, whom I had just parted ways with. I was a bit surprised to bump into them so unexpectedly, but I sincerely congratulated her husband, Brandon. "Brandon, I heard you're an outstanding employee getting an award today. Congratulations." But instead of responding, Brandon just looked me over, as if appraising me. "Is this the factory worker classmate you were talking about?" "Yeah. He has the audacity to attend the company's anniversary party despite being a mere worker." Sarah returned the words with a bitter expression. Then Brandon, ignoring my presence, curiously asked Sarah, "But for a factory worker, he's wearing a nice suit. I'm an elite, so I'm quite particular about suits. Even if he tries hard to wear a good suit, it's ruined because he's a lowly worker. It's truly embarrassing to have someone like him as a classmate." Frowning, Sarah spat out her words, and Brandon inquired further. "Embarrassing? Yes. Imagine, he's been a factory worker since dropping out of middle school. That's 30 years of being a mere worker." "Wow, really? That's unbelievable." Sarah pointed and laughed at me, and Brandon leaned back, distancing himself as if amused. They both looked down on me with obvious disdain and then glanced at the person next to me. There stood Annie, watching the two of them intently. So this bottom-of-the-barrel worker, even though he's a dropout, managed to get married. "What does your wife do?" Sarah asked me, and I answered honestly. "She works in the same field as me. We met at work." At that moment, Sarah and Brandon looked at each other and burst out laughing. A couple both sweating it out in the field, doing menial work. Perfect match for an incompetent dropout like you. They started mocking not just me, but also my wife. I couldn't understand how they could say such awful things to my wife, a stranger to them. As I stood there stunned, Sarah blurted out, "But if I were you, I'd be too miserable to even mention working in a factory." Yeah, for an elite like me, it's unimaginable to live such a lowly life. "Please stop talking like that," I retorted angrily to their cruel insults. But Sarah looked at me as if I were something dirty and turned her back, and Brandon shooed me away as if swatting a fly. "If we keep talking to you, people might think I'm a low-class worker like you. Could you go somewhere else?" Yeah, talking to someone lowly like you might rub off on me. I was boiling with anger at such rude behavior. But as a grown-up, I couldn't just let my emotions take over and start yelling, so I tried hard to hold it in. However, Sarah seemed to mock my feelings and hurled more disdainful words. "From now on, if you see us, don't come close, okay? My husband is a Harvard-educated director, way different from a lowly, incompetent person like you." Her words, enjoying the harassment, brought back painful middle school memories. Back then, and even now, Sarah acted arrogantly, thinking she wouldn't be retaliated against. I felt like I heard the sound of my patience snapping inside. "Well, your husband will be unemployed from tomorrow." Sarah was taken aback by my unexpected words, staring with wide eyes. As I stared back expressionlessly, she laughed it off, pretending. My husband unemployed? What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? Why would a mere factory worker like you have any power over my husband?" "That's because I'm the president of the company." "President?" For a moment, Sarah was dumbfounded, then suddenly burst into loud laughter. "You, the president? Don't be silly. Are you just saying that because my husband is a Harvard-educated director and you want to one-up him? It's not a lie." Yeah, keep your fantasies to yourself, just like in middle school." I continued seriously, but Sarah clearly didn't believe a word. Then Brandon looked back and forth between me and A, standing by my side, and shrugged in disbelief. "Married to a husband who spouts such fantasies, she must be quite a wife. Aren't you embarrassed to stand beside such a man?" After spitting out those words, Brandon and Sarah hurriedly left together. As I watched their backs, I trembled with anger. The person who had harassed me so much in middle school was still treating me this way, even now as an adult. And it wasn't just me. They were mocking Annie in my workplace, and I couldn't stay silent any longer. As I was about to step forward in anger to call them back, A gentle hand was placed on my shoulder. "Annie, I heard everything, but it's not good to reprimand them here." But I couldn't just back down, especially after they laughed at Annie. But as I looked at her, I was taken aback by her unexpected expression. She wore a mischievous smile. "I have a good idea." Hearing Annie's plan, I nodded deeply, feeling a sense of relief. When the announcement for the party's start was made, we moved to our assigned seats. The event began on time, and the employees started singing the company anthem. In my peripheral vision, I saw Sarah and Brandon singing along as well. After checking with the organizers, it turned out that Brandon was indeed being recognized as an outstanding employee and, along with several other distinguished employees, was escorted to a special seat with his family. Imagining what was about to happen, I suppressed a rising chuckle. After the anthem, the entertainment part started. There were performances by a magician and comedians summarizing the company's history in a skit, filling the room with a festive atmosphere. As the entertainment ended, the host led the applause and continued with the ceremony. "Next, we'll have a speech from the president and CEO, Mr. Young." Upon those words, I began to walk slowly. As I stood on the stage, I looked over the gathered crowd, expressing my gratitude. While everyone listened intently, only two people were the exception. Sarah and Brandon were staring at me, mouths agape in shock. Even from the stage, I could see their mouths moving. Why is he speaking? It can't be true. He's the president. I haven't heard anything about this. Imagining that's what they were muttering, I continued speaking. Normally, we would now proceed to the ceremony for awarding outstanding employees. However, before that, I have an announcement to make. One of the awardees, the director who was assigned to our overseas branch, Brandon, will be dismissed from his position effective today. The room was enveloped in silence in an instant. As I tried to continue with a smile, the host approached me. What is your reasoning for this?" the host asked me, appearing confused. It was then that Sarah suddenly stood up and shouted, "That's a lie. Everyone, this man was just a classmate from my middle school. He's just a mere factory worker. Why is he standing there? Yeah, this must be some kind of prank. But this taste in entertainment is terrible, right everyone?" With her shrill voice, Sarah spat out these words, and next to her Brandon grinned smugly, looking back and forth between me and Sarah, bursting into a brazen laugh. The guests in the room started murmuring, enveloped in a tense atmosphere. I continued speaking calmly. "Sarah just mentioned earlier that working in a factory is a lowly job. She also told me not to talk to her anymore, fearing that the lowliness would rub off on her." "So what?" Sarah glared back at me, hands on her hips, still refusing to admit her wrongdoing. "I work for this company. I cannot continue working with someone who is ashamed of our work. But my husband is an elite director, completely different from you. End this charade now." But at that moment, the executive director, Ethan, rushed to the awardee's seat, his face flushed with anger, and started yelling at Brandon. "Hey, apologize to Mr. Young right now." However, Sarah and Brandon, still half smiling, refused to believe Ethan's words. "What's wrong, Ethan? Why should we apologize to some factory worker? Jer, he's just a lowly, incompetent worker. He's just trying to scare us by lying about firing my husband." But Ethan shouted back, his voice trembling. "State the name of our company. Young High-Tech Corporation, but Yum, oh." Muttering this, Brandon suddenly realized, and his face turned pale. His name, David Yum. Could it be? He's really our company's president. At Brandon's words, Sarah froze in shock. During this time, I had been watching them, and judging that they finally understood, I spoke again. "It seems you finally believe me." Brandon, his face ashen, was shaking all over, hardly able to stand from his chair. In fact, Annie is the daughter of a major manufacturer that produces some of the leading semiconductor devices in the country. The company that accepted me, a middle school grad, was one of her parents' factories. At that time, it was still a mid-sized company taking on various machinery productions, but 30 years ago, it developed its first proprietary product, a microcurrent meter, and has since expanded its business with the advancement of electronic device technology. Now, alongside semiconductor manufacturing, we're collaborating with foreign companies to develop even more precise testing systems. Combining the knowledge I gained in college with a practical perspective, I actively participated in product development after graduating, resulting in several hit products. Thanks to this, I was transferred to the headquarters, promoted to Director of Electronic Hardware Development, and that's where I met Annie. Even after our marriage, Annie's family never spoke ill of my past attending a night high school. Instead, they warmly accepted me as a diligent and enthusiastic young man, rare in this era. Wanting to repay this family and the company that raised me, I devoted myself to my work without distraction. Then 2 years ago, when Annie's father retired, I took over as the president. Understanding the truth, Brandon looked like he was about to collapse, and Ethan addressed him even more desperately. "You were overseas, so you might not have known directly, but at least check the information about the company you work for. That is." Brandon, his face still pale, tried to stammer an excuse. But Ethan, his face red with anger, kept yelling, "You're so caught up in being an elite from Harvard University that you don't even know the face of our president. I'm ashamed that I recommended someone like you as an outstanding employee." Ethan then grabbed Brandon by the scruff of his neck and dragged him in front of me. Ethan forcefully bowed Brandon's head and then joined him in kneeling down. "I deeply apologize for the disrespectful behavior of my subordinate. Please forgive us. I'm so sorry for my ignorance. It's inexcusable." Brandon finally knelt down of his own accord, his face turning bright red as sweat dripped onto the floor. Annie, who had been watching this unfold, turned to me with a question. Yes, this was the plan Annie had come up with. "David, what will you do now? You've revealed the truth in front of everyone to avoid being accused of unilaterally firing an employee." "Yeah, well, he's fired. Someone who insults a person they've just met like that definitely doesn't fit in with our company." As I said this, Brandon fell silent, his forehead dripping with sweat. Ethan quickly spoke up. "I apologize for my wrong judgment, causing such inconvenience. I'll refrain from suing for defamation since he has apologized. Let's fire him and put an end to this commotion." Hearing my words, Ethan seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, thinking the situation was resolved. But the next voice came from Sarah, who had been dumbfoundedly watching everything. Her face flushed with anger, she lashed out at me. "I don't care if you're the president or whatever. Why do you get to act so high and mighty?" Furious and almost panting, Sarah was met with my calm response. "Before you criticize others, maybe you should worry about your own life. With your husband fired, you'll lose your income and won't be able to live luxuriously anymore." Sarah, upon hearing my words, finally seemed to grasp her situation, standing frozen, her lips quivering. Annie, glancing at her, whispered to me, "David, let's have those people leave now." "Yeah, you're right. It's a special anniversary party, after all. We need to make sure everyone who came enjoys it." I instructed the staff to escort Brandon, who was still kneeling, and Sarah, pale-faced and rigid, out of the venue. After they left, we refreshed the atmosphere of the venue and successfully concluded the party. Brandon later repeatedly tried to apologize, but I dismissed them. Having an employee who looks down on others just because of Sarah's words could eventually lead to issues at work. Brandon, who had been fired, suffered greatly since he had already purchased a luxurious home and car on loan, relying on his salary. Sarah, who always loved a lavish lifestyle and apparently never saved much, found their finances in dire straits within months. Unable to pay the enormous loans, the couple eventually had to sell their house and car and move to a shabby apartment. Brandon struggled to find a new job, losing both money and status, leading to endless quarrels in their now impoverished household. Eventually, they divorced and now live separately. Brandon, desperate for a job, finally found work as a factory worker. He spends his days standing in front of a conveyor belt, endlessly assembling machines as part of a repetitive process. Meanwhile, Sarah became a topic of discussion among her local classmates for her actions towards me. Abandoned even by her family, she now lives alone, struggling to afford meals. Her once prized beauty faded away. She's barely making ends meet by working night jobs. As for Annie and me, we continue to live happily. Our focus on developing excellent employees led to stable and growing company performance. Just as the company helped me, I now aim to fulfill the hopes of the younger generation. We've enhanced our educational programs and training systems for our employees, which has already led to the creation of an innovative new product. This product is expected to be a significant step forward for our company. But it's not just a new product that was born. Annie and I also welcomed a beautiful daughter. Annie's family is overjoyed and adores her. I'm so glad I met you. I'm truly happy. Me too. When I graduated from middle school, I thought my life was over. But by never giving up on my potential and tirelessly searching for a path, I've been helped by many and now lead such a happy life. I want to continue delivering products that make the world a better place as a way to give back. With this resolve in my heart, I smiled at my precious family. Am I really good enough for you? You're the one I want. I don't want to marry anyone else. My fiancée, Emily, said this with a smile. Moreover, Emily is a president's daughter. I, a single part-time employee in my 30s, was an unlikely match for her. My name is Michael. I've been dating Emily for 3 years. Our meeting was thanks to a high school classmate, David, who took me to a matchmaking party. It was a small gathering, held locally, with people from nearby areas participating. There, Emily, who had approached me while I was spacing out, talked to me. At the party, being a part-time employee, I got cold attitudes from the women who looked down on me. I've been working part-time to take care of my sick mother, but she's getting better, and now I'm aiming for a full-time position. I honestly shared, but the chilly gazes remained. Well, I guess it can't be helped. I was almost giving up when Emily showed a completely opposite attitude. Oh, you work in the deli section of a supermarket. Then you must be good at cooking. Well, I am good at making quiches. Quiches? I love quiche Lorraine. Unlike me, Emily was an office worker at a mid-sized company. She had a stable salary and was in her early 20s, so young. I couldn't understand why she approached someone like me. Because you looked as bored as me, she replied with a laugh when I asked. Then she asked me, "Hey, which supermarket do you work at?" I worked at a small, long-standing supermarket in this town. When I told her the name of the supermarket I worked at, she smiled contentedly and said, "I've decided. I'm going to date you." What? I was surprised by her words. Of course, unless you don't like it. No, not at all. I'm the one who should say, "Thank you so much." That's how I started dating her. Sorry to ask again, but are you really sure about someone like me? When I asked for confirmation, she replied in a sulky manner, "Because I wanted to be with you." As we were in our 30s, naturally we thought about marriage. But Emily was still 24. She was more than 10 years younger than me, and from an outsider's perspective, she might have seemed to have chosen the wrong partner. I don't need a reason to like you, or is there something you're dissatisfied with? No, of course not. It's just that sometimes I wonder why me. There was another reason I hesitated about dating her. It was because she was a president's daughter. Moreover, to my surprise, the president of the company that owns the supermarket you work at is my father. She confessed this to me within a week of dating. That's why, when I met you at the matchmaking party, I felt there must be some connection with you, Emily said. I was speechless at her words. She had been encouraged to go on matchmaking dates before but never found anyone interesting, so she decided to go to a party with a friend. Yet, an office worker from a mid-sized company and a part-time supermarket employee like me. Even that was an unlikely match, let alone the fact that her family owned a business. You don't want to break up, do you? Just as I was about to say we were an unlikely match, she glared at me. While I was stunned, I apologized to her, looking down, saying, "No, it's not like that, sorry. Time flew by just like that, and it was only a few days ago that she said, "I think it's about time we start thinking about getting married." I said, "Of course, I've been thinking about it too," and she smiled, took something out of her bag, and held it out to me. "Here you go, an engagement ring. Isn't it usually the man who gives that?" When I told her my surprise, she said, "It's okay, isn't it? A woman can give it too." And that's how we became engaged. Now, I had to meet her parents. "Won't your parents oppose us?" "Don't worry, my dad isn't that kind of strict person." Okay, but still, a part-timer like me and you, it's like we're from different worlds. That doesn't matter, I want you. Hearing Emily say that, I fell silent. Right, my job now is to make Emily happy. It's the first time I've met someone who cares so much about me. I realized I had to cherish her. "Got it, I'll try my best to become the man worthy of you." I smiled and replied to her, "I don't know if your parents will like me, but I'll do my best." Thank you. When we went to greet her parents, surprisingly, they accepted me smoothly. Her father, as I heard, was a son-in-law himself, and had come from the countryside when he was young, struggling a lot. He had a tough time when he wanted to marry because her grandfather, who ran the supermarket, opposed it initially. Because of that, he thought that when his daughter brought home a marriage partner, he would approve unless there was a serious reason not to. I vowed to her parents to make her absolutely happy. Then we were busy preparing for the wedding, and before we knew it, the day arrived. At her request, we had a small wedding with close friends and colleagues at a restaurant we rented out. We had already greeted the family, so they didn't come. It was a casual party. I was nervous all morning and went to the venue. Little did I know that a terrible misfortune would strike on the wedding day. It happened right before the party started. My boss, Jack, suddenly came up to me and asked, "Hey, how did a guy like you manage to win over the boss's daughter? Did you do something shady?" "Jack, what are you talking about?" I was shocked by Jack's sudden comment. He was supposed to be happy for my wedding. I couldn't believe I was hearing such words. Everyone at work is gossiping. They say Michael must have used some dirty tricks to win the president's daughter's heart. Yeah, right. Like a part-timer could marry a president's daughter. Jack and other colleagues chuckled at me. People around started to glance over. A tense atmosphere surrounded us, and all I could do was bow my head and endure. "What's going on here?" Then, Emily's angry voice echoed. She stepped forward to defend me and continued, "Stop saying weird things. And I know, there was a time when he was supposed to be promoted to full-time, but you crushed it. You even deliberately put a foreign object in his quiches to create a complaint." "Emily, that was just my guess." As I tried to stop her, Jack blurted out, "Why does the lady know about that?" Then, frowning, he made a face as if realizing he had slipped up. I was stunned. There had been talks about my full-time promotion a few years ago. But a few days later, A complaint arose about a foreign object found in the quiches I was in charge of cooking. This led to the full-time employment opportunity being scrapped. At the time, when I heard about the contamination, I was pale-faced, and Jack said, "It's a shame the result turned out this way because you didn't make proper quiches. You'll need to write a report on this." I remember Jack had a brief smirk after saying that. I, having no recollection of such a mistake, confronted Jack. "Wait a minute, there's no way something could have gotten mixed in during the process. I always ensure everything is checked thoroughly. This has never happened before." "So what are you saying? Are you implying that the customer is lying?" "I've never said anything like that." I began to suspect Jack when I saw his smirking face. He was the one who had displayed those quiches in the store. But there was no proof. I couldn't think of any reason why Jack would do such a thing. Then, an unexpected person appeared before us. Seeing this person, Jack's eyes widened in fear. Mr. Thompson, Emily's father, the president of the supermarket, Mr. Thompson, glared at Jack and continued. "I've been listening to the conversation. You just asked Emily. Why does the lady know about that? What do you mean by that?" "No, I was just wondering why she knew about Michael's complaint." Jack stammered his response. "Michael and my daughter are in a relationship. They would discuss such things. The issue is why you reacted to that conversation. That is." Jack slumped, weakened by Mr. Thompson's words. Then, suddenly, he apologized to me. "I'm sorry. I thought if you became a full-time employee, my position would be at risk." Why would that be the case? That is, Jack fumbled for words at my question. "Let's discuss this in another room." "Yes." Mr. Thompson said this and walked away with Jack. As they left the venue, we looked at each other. Why did Jack do such a thing? I was consumed by these thoughts until the ceremony ended. Mr. Thompson later revealed that Jack was worried that if I, a diligent worker, became full-time, I would quickly surpass and outshine him. It's jealousy, I suppose. It's regrettable that such a person is an employee of my company. After the ceremony, in the back room, Mr. Thompson finished explaining the situation to me. I can't believe he had such a childish motive, and to cause trouble for a customer. That's outrageous. I intend to take some action against him. It was an unbelievable act, causing trouble for an innocent customer. A justified consequence indeed. Now, let's put this unpleasantness behind us. By the way, how is that plan of yours coming along? Yes, it seems to be on track. I replied cheerfully to Mr. Thompson's words. It's sad to lose a skilled and experienced part-timer like you, but this was my suggestion after all. Yes, thanks to that, it looks like Emily and I will have a good life together. She is our only daughter. Take good care of her. Yes, I understand. And a year after the wedding, I had left the supermarket and opened my own store. It was a small deli. We managed to open the store with savings I had accumulated over the years and Emily's savings. I was surprised when your father suggested I start my own shop. Owning a deli has been my dream since high school. High school, huh? To think we had met back then. Really. As it turns out, Emily and I had met once, 10 years ago. Back then, Emily, in her rebellious phase and often clashing with her parents, frequently ran away from home. I met her during one of those times when she had left home. "Hey, young lady, what are you doing in front of a convenience store at this hour? It's none of your business." Seeing her sullen expression, I just couldn't leave her alone. So, I gave her the leftover quiches from the supermarket I was planning to have for dinner. "Here, if you're hungry, eat this. It's better than staying hungry, right? It's none of your business." Just as she said that, her stomach growled. Oh no, my stomach just growled. "See, I told you so." I laughed loudly beside her, who was embarrassed. After listening to her parents' complaints, I persuaded her and took her back home. She looked so different then, with heavy makeup and a much heavier body, that I didn't realize until she told me that she was the same girl I met back then. We must be deeply connected in some way. Thanks to your father providing the land, I was able to build my own shop. There are no rental spaces around here, so it was a big help. Your life is starting anew. Let's make delicious deli food together and make our community happy. Yeah, you're right. Gently, I touched Emily's stomach. Next year, our family will grow, and our days will be filled with joy. I'm determined to keep working hard. That's a promise I made to myself.